Picking right back up, this is moving into the rhythmic vocabulary for this rhythm exercise group. And you notice now, if you look at the page, we are in 3/4. And this is just to show you how this sort of concept feels and sits in another one of the common meters that we're used to doing. Now the one here, and I wanted to see, the last time I put some music in the video, it did get a copyright flag from YouTube, so I'm going to try and use the smallest amount of music possible to get my point across. But if you look at, you know what, we'll talk about the music when it comes to number 45, right? So rhythmic vocabulary, we have number 43. I'm going to do this still at 110, right? For the same reason that ending number 42 beforehand at 110 may have been more digestible. So we're going to listen to number 43, and we're going to do this. Let's do it 4 times across, right? So we have 3 groups of 2, 2 groups of 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. Taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, 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 takina, ta. Right? Hopefully, again, should feel like that doesn't seem alien. You may not have given it any thought before in your life, but that should feel relatively predictable, especially after a couple times. This next one is the ostinato, short repetitive musical pattern, is based off of, and I'm going to get the loop going here in a second, something in West African and more specifically Afro-Cuban music, a rhythm called rumba clave. And it's not uncommon for a whole song to have like either folkloric or popular like salsa song to imply this rhythm or out and out state it the entire time. So we're going to listen to a little loop, and actually, well, let's do number 44 first, and then I'm going to put a loop in, and I'll tell you when to start clapping this ostinato so you can have a different experience with it, a more multi-dimensional one. So here we go. 44. 1, 2, 3, 1. Ready, go. Taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, taki, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, ta. That might sound like a bunch of math to you. Let's put it into a different musical context. Here we go. Ready, go. Taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, 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 takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, taki, taka, takina, taka, taka, ta. All right, so hopefully, obviously, that was a lot of, probably a little faster than you were expecting it, but listen to it again. Rewind it, listen to it again, and let's see if we can do it just again, and see if you can get past the point where it's reading, and you can just start to feel the flow of it. And this is something that is going to be useful because it's still in a familiar meter, and yet it's an perhaps an unfamiliar order of these groupings for you. So let's try that again. I know you can rewind it, but I want to do it again anyway. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. Taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina. Now just listening. If if I actually start the rhythm on the other side, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, takina, taka, taka. I'm not expecting you to hear immediately or clearly what the connection is, but hopefully you can hear that the groupings agree with that, right? And that this term clave can mean key, as in the key to unlocking a riddle or a mystery, something like that. So this is one, and there are a lot more examples that I could use with this, but this was something that I had on hand that I realized after the fact, like, oh, there's some rumba clave in this that would be interesting to use in this context. Okay, now looking at 45, we have a duet. And now it's a very simple 2-measure duet. So here's what we're going to do. Even though it's not written as repeats, we're going to do these 2 measures twice. I'm going to play the player 1 part twice. I want you to clap it along with me, and then I want you to rewind and do the player 2 part along with me doing the player 1. And likewise, when I do the player 2 part twice, again, in sequence, the first time, immediately into the second time, do it in unison, and then do the player 1 part over it. Now, these are simple pairings of these rhythms at first, but what you'll notice is that there are some kind of predictable relationships that you start to fall into, where if you see a taka or a slash and a triangle, you know where in that triangle that the one part is going to land where the other one is. You know what? Let's just listen to it. How about that? So player 1, 2 times through. 1, 2, 3, 1. Ready, go. Taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, 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 takina, taka, 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 takina, ta. Player 2, twice through. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, go. Taka, 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 takina, 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 taka, 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 takina, 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 taka, taka, ta. That second measure of player 2, you actually, if you speed it up, takina, takina, taka, 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 it's America from West Side Story. Takina, taka, taka, taka. Right? So now let's look at number 46. This is a little bit more of a complex duet. It's 4 measures long. Now look at it real quick and see if you can tell what meter we're in. I'll wait. Yeah, we're back in some sort of 4. We have 8 grains per bar. So if you said 8 or 4, you're right. So I'm going to do 2 times each line. Again, player 1, 2 times across, and then player 2, 2 times across. And again, go back, do them in unison, and then do the other part. Do it in unison and do it the other part. Probably the most makes the most sense to do player 1 in unison with me, player 2 in unison with me, then go back and do player 2 against my player 1 and player 1 against my player 2. I will leave it up to your capable hands. 46, player 1, 2 times across, 110 beats per minute. So much information. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, taka, dina, taka, 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 dina, takina, taka, 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 takina, takina, taka, taka, dina, taka, taka, takina, takita. Takita. I sometimes get a little carried away, but hopefully that didn't mess you up. And again, my claps are on, even if my solo was a little bit off. That was a test. All right, player 2, 2 times across. Here we go. 1, two, ready, go. Taka, taka, dina, taka, taka, takina, 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 taka, 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 ta. Taka, taki, dina, taka, taka, takina, 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 taka, 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 taka. The parentheses means to rest. So there's kind of where the notation starts to fray at the edges is when you have to start notating silence. So now, if you look at how things line up vertically there, you look at the center of each shape, that tells you whether the things start at the same time or not. And so you can see in measure 2 that the second grouping in the player 2 starts in between the groupings of player 1, right? So the beginning or the center of each shape, the center of the slash, center of the triangle vertically, you cut it left and right, and the center of the square, if you look for how they align with each other, that just gives you a hint of when in relationship to the other one it starts. So now, number 47, the multi-purpose etude. And it's just because it's got some variety in here. So we're going to do this. I'm going to do this 2 times across as before. And I want you to do it, of course, do it in unison with me. And there's another video of me doing this faster, which we're going to be using most likely for quiz purposes and just to get a little bit more in depth with this type of material. But I'm going to do it straight across 2 times, and I want you to be able to do it in unison with me. And then I'm going to do the retrograde 2 times and cross. This is a separate little project where we're reading, instead of left to right, we read right to left. Shapes work well that way. This is one of the cool things about them being so simple, is that we can apply them in different ways. So I'll do it 2 times in a row, straight across, left to right, stop, and I'm going to do it 2 times in a row, right to left. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Takadina, 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 taki, takina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, takadina, taka, takadina, taka, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, takadina, again a dean, takadina, 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 takina, takina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, takadina, taka, takadina, tak, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, takadina. All right, now the reason I did that thing is because when you practice doing a canon, that's where you're going to start, where I just made that indication. That's where you are going to start your last measure, right? We're going to do a 1-bar removed canon. I'll explain that more later. I just wanted to put some context in that exact moment for you. Let's do the retrograde. One, 2, ready, and go. Takadina, takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, taka, takadina, taka, takadina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, 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 takina, taka, taka, takina, taka, taka, takadina, taka, takadina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, 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 takadina. Right, so that's retrograde. And you notice that last bar is pretty funky. As long as your grains agree, then you'll be able to kind of plow through, and then you can make sense on the other side of it. Like in retrospect, you go, okay, that made sense. After I jumped over it, I got a sense of the scope of what I just did, the amount of distance I just covered. So now, if we were to notate this rhythm, and especially if I went faster, like takadina, 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 takina, takina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, takadina, taka, takadina, taka, taka, takina, taka, taka, takina, takadina, ta. If I started the takadina, 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 takina, takina, takadina, takina, takina, takadina, 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 if I started going faster, which is something that musicians, it's not unreasonable to expect these sorts of rhythms and these sorts of styles would go that quickly. The regular notation, and I put it in the book so that you can see there, it's quarter notes and then just a mess, right? Unless you have experience reading music, right? So we have dotted eighth, 16th, tied to an eighth, tied to an eighth, tied to an eighth, 16th, dotted eighth, like it's all over the place. That's the way that musicians would read it. And then if we try to simplify it visually to just use less elements, it actually becomes harder to read, because then I don't know where the beginnings of the groupings are, and it becomes unnecessarily context dependent. Whereas if we just went back to the shapes, the groupings, it actually is remarkably simple. There are a lot of songs that I can suggest, and probably a lot of songs that if you thought about it, you could suggest, where this is a useful way to make sense of where the emphasis is in the music. But in general, it's just also a different way to process rhythms so that when you go about creating your own thing, you have an alternative way to go about it. The concept of grains, the idea that the grain is constant, but the distance between these accents can shift without any underlying major change of tempo. We're not really talking about tempo change. We're talking about change in emphasis, really. So I hope this was easy to understand. If not, let me know. After you, of course, go back and rewatch anything that you thought may have been a little bit unclear. The one thing that I didn't take note of, but I was assuming that you took note of, is that this multi-purpose etude that we just did at the very end, how many grains per bar? Take a look at it. Again, just like 42, once you can spot those four squares, 16. So again, the hope was that some part of your brain, conscious or not, realizes that these are familiar rhythms. And with that, I will say goodbye, and I'll see you next time.